Rosie O'Donnell and Ellen DeGeneres were friends for 30 years. Ellen came out on Rosie's show in 1996, one of the most significant moments in both of their careers. Rosie held Ellen's newborn babies. They swam in each other's pools. They were, by any reasonable definition, close. Then Ellen's show took off. And according to Rosie, Ellen looked her in the eye and said she didn't know her, not privately, publicly, in an interview after 30 years. Today we go through what Rosie O'Donnell has actually said about Ellen DeGeneres, specifically on the record, in her own words. The falling out, the workplace scandal, the timeline of what happened after the show ended, and what the documented pattern of Ellen's career looks like when you put it all together honestly. Everything in this video is clearly labeled: verified fact, on-record statements, observable timeline. You will always know which is which. Let's get into it. Rosie O'Donnell has spoken publicly about her relationship with Ellen DeGeneres in terms that are specific, detailed, and, given the length of their friendship, genuinely striking. She has described how Ellen came out on her show, how they remained close for years afterward, how she held Ellen's newborn babies, how they spent time together in Miami, how she considered Ellen a genuine friend across 3 decades. And then Ellen went on the record and said she didn't know Rosie.
Larry King asked her, and Kelly and I were in bed watching it, and he asked her, whatever happened to Rosie O'Donnell? Her show went down the tubes. And Ellen said, I don't know Rosie. We're not friends. And that was like one of the most painful things that ever happened to me in show business in my life. I couldn't believe it.
Why did she say that?
I don't know, because I have photos of her holding my newborn babies. I knew her for 30 years. Like, I don't know Rosie, we're not friends. It was so upsetting to me that I had T-shirts made. I don't know Rosie, we're not friends. And I gave them out to my staff because it was very painful. And, we've never sort of gotten over it.
Did she ever reach out to you to explain it or what her thinking was, or?
No.
I mean, I'm not the first person to say this, but she's a strange creature.
Well, we're not similar. I can say that for sure. We're not emotionally similar.
No.
And I was never asked to go on her show. When I was, it was long after they had been on for many years. And she had the same staff as my show, the same producers, the same everything. And now I don't blame her for doing that. I didn't create the genre of a Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas talk show. This was what I grew up watching. But I did think that she was all of a sudden in the position I was in, where she was starting a show and wanted it to be successful and get the money and the accolades that came with it. And instead of deciding to stand next to me and hold my hand, which is what I did to her, she did the opposite. And I couldn't believe it,
Rosie has been careful in how she characterizes what happened. She doesn't call Ellen evil. She doesn't make extreme claims. What she describes is something more specific. A person who, once her show took off, made a calculated decision about who was useful to her and who wasn't. Instead of deciding to stand next to me and hold my hand, which is what I did to her, she did the opposite, and I couldn't believe it. She also noted something significant. Ellen was never invited to appear on Rosie's show during its run. And when Rosie eventually appeared on Ellen's show, it was years into Ellen's run, with the same producers, the same staff, the same infrastructure Rosie had built. Ellen had essentially inherited the template Rosie had created and built an empire on top of it, without extending the person who built it any professional courtesy. That is Rosie's documented, on-record account. Make of it what you will. In the summer of 2020, BuzzFeed News published a detailed investigation in which over a dozen former employees of the Ellen DeGeneres show described the workplace in terms that shocked people who had spent 20 years watching Ellen tell the world to be kind. The accounts were specific: racism, fear, intimidation from senior producers, employees fired after taking medical or bereavement leave, a culture in which staff were reportedly told not to speak to Ellen directly, not because she was busy, but because that was simply how things worked. Warner Brothers conducted an internal investigation. 3 executive producers were removed. Ellen addressed it publicly on air at the start of season 18. "I learned that things happened here that never should have happened, and I take that very seriously." Joe Rogan had said years earlier, before any of this became public, that Ellen's niceness always felt forced, that people who are like that all the time, relentlessly, performatively, it doesn't read as genuine.
It's so weird when you see, like, a lot of people saying that someone who seems so nice is not nice at all.
She doesn't seem nice, but that people have a very poor judge of character. She doesn't seem nice. It seems forced. People that are like that all the time, she doesn't seem nice. It's very forced. And whatever, you're allowed to be a bitch, right? You're allowed to be a bitch. You're allowed to be nasty to people. You're accomplished. You're a comedian. You did the whole thing. What you're not allowed to do is have a Guantanamo Bay situation in the backstage of your show where everybody's walking around afraid for their life, and it's like Abu Ghraib where they're hooked up to wires and they
dogs
have like
around them.
Yeah, she's got dogs and hoods. If an intern's late, they have a hood on. I don't support that. That's just me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Whether Rogan's read was accurate or simply lucky, the BuzzFeed investigation confirmed that the gap between the public persona and the private reality was significant. Rosie O'Donnell, who had been publicly dismissed by Ellen years earlier, said simply, she wasn't surprised. In May 2022, the Ellen DeGeneres show ended after 19 seasons. And what followed in the months after is worth examining as a documented timeline, not as accusation, but as observable sequence. In August 2022, 2 months after the show ended, Heche was involved in a severe car crash in Los Angeles. Her Mini Cooper struck a residence and caught fire. She sustained severe burns and brain injuries from smoke inhalation. She was placed on life support and died on August 11, 2022. Heche had been Ellen's partner in the late 1990s, one of the most high-profile same-sex relationships in entertainment history at the time. Their breakup in 2000 was widely covered. By all accounts, they had not been close for years before Heche's death. Rosie O'Donnell spoke publicly about learning of Heche's accident.
And I'm bereft. Now, how did I know her? She did my show twice, and she and Ellen came to my home in Miami and swam in my pool, and we had lunch once. So I knew her, not really well, but in the celebrity vernacular, and that she was with Ellen for a while, and then how her career suffered, and her book, Call Me Crazy. There was a horribly tragic child abuse in that family, and I've always sort of felt sorry for her. So when she's dying and when that all happens, I'm legitimately bereft in a way that maybe surprised me. I'd wake up in the morning and think, oh my God, something's wrong. Oh, Heche is in a coma. Like, it was obsessive to me. So she died.
In 2002, the Ellen DeGeneres show was canceled, and then 2 months later, Heche, Ellen's ex-girlfriend, was in a really bad car accident where she flew her Mini Cooper into someone's house and it caught fire. And what has never sat right with me is the cross comparison between the coroner's report and the actual aerial footage. The coroner's report says that she was unconscious until her death, after just from smoke inhalation and from being brain dead from the fumes in her brain. But if you look at the footage, she sits straight up, and that takes a conscious effort, I feel. But I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. But the other thing is her other host, her co-host Twitch, died 4 months after that. And I just think that that's a suspicious amount of close people around you dying in weird ways.
She described knowing Heche through Ellen, swimming in each other's pools, having lunch together. She described the tragedy as genuinely affecting her. Heche's death was ruled an accident. There is no investigation into foul play. We present the timeline as observable fact, not as evidence of anything beyond what it is. 4 months after Heche's death, in December 2022, Stephen Twitch Boss died by suicide. He was 40 years old. Twitch had been a beloved presence on The Ellen Show for 8 years, serving as DJ and eventually executive producer. His death came as a shock to virtually everyone who knew him publicly. TMZ reported that Twitch left a suicide note. The contents of that note have not been made fully public. TMZ reported that the note alluded to challenges he had faced. His wife Allison Holker reported him missing after he left home without his car and switched his phone to airplane mode. What the note said specifically, and whether it referenced Ellen or the show, has not been officially confirmed by law enforcement or his family. Claims circulating online about the note's specific contents are unverified. We present them as such. What is documented is the timeline. The show ended. Within months, 2 people connected to Ellen's world died in separate, unrelated circumstances. One in an accident, one by suicide. That timeline is observable. What it means, if anything, is something the documented evidence does not currently answer. We covered Ellen's documented connections to Diddy in a previous video on this channel. The short version. Diddy appeared on Ellen's show 17 documented times across her run. They were photographed together at events. Their social circles overlapped extensively. In September 2024, a month after the FBI raided Diddy's Miami and Los Angeles properties, Ellen and her wife Portia de Rossi announced they were leaving the United States and relocating to the United Kingdom. The official explanation given to friends and press was the election of Donald Trump. Ellen had been publicly critical of Trump for years. That explanation is plausible on its surface. Elon Musk responded publicly to a post suggesting the political explanation might not be the complete picture, specifically referencing her documented connections to Diddy. That is Elon Musk's public statement on X. It is his characterization. It is not evidence of wrongdoing. We present it as his public comment, nothing more. What is observable is the timing. The raids happened. A month later, Ellen announced she was leaving permanently. Here is the documented picture. Rosie O'Donnell, neighbor, who knew Ellen for 30 years, describes a woman who publicly dismissed her the moment her show took off, and who built an empire on a template Rosie had created without extending her any professional courtesy. Over 36 former employees described a workplace culture that bore no resemblance to the Be Kind brand Ellen had spent 2 decades building publicly. 3 executive producers were removed. Ellen apologized on air. 2 people connected to her world died in the months after her show ended. One in an accident, one by suicide. The timeline is observable. We have not stated and do not state that Ellen bears any responsibility for either death. And then, 1 month after the FBI raided Diddy's properties, she announced she was leaving the country. Each of these facts stands on its own. What they add up to, if anything, is something you will have to assess for yourself. Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.